and again, these are not insights original to me, but they're things I've become persuaded of more and more just observing reality. And also, I would say, studying the person who I study, which is Jane Austen, just is something very dear to her heart. The question of liberty, the question of freedom, what it means for a human person to be free. We as Americans prize our liberty. We love our freedoms. We love our rights. We have certain ideas about what those things are, what they mean, and what they enable us to do. And I think sometimes we err on the side of a notion of liberty that actually translates into I can do whatever I want. And much of the time that's kind of true, but I don't think that's good for us. And I think the purpose of a liberal arts education is true freedom on the level of the soul. And it's also aimed at forging a connection between freedom on the level of the soul and freedom politically. So I want to kind of flesh that out for a moment. In the classical tradition, there's a notion of freedom of soul understood as self-governance. So this is an idea that the rational part of the soul, reason, governs over the rest of the soul by harmony, creates a harmony within the soul, and reason always governs by persuasion, not by force. So real freedom is when I'm able to see what the good action is to be performed, know that it's good, and be persuaded that I ought to pursue it, not force myself into it or be forced by someone else into it. So something like virtue signaling would be an example of a false kind of liberty. I'm almost forcing someone else by my example I'm shaming them into making a choice rather than persuading them that this or that is a good course of action. The person I work on, Jane Austen, wrote a novel called Persuasion, and this is a novel very much connected to this question of liberty and what it means for a human person to be free, and what the connection is between freedom for an individual and freedom for a polity. So the problem of the novel is there's a person who has every opportunity at his disposal and really no checks to his personal choices. He can do what he wants, when he wants, how he wants. And he's miserable. He's really unhappy. So this is the other piece to a liberal arts education. If the goal of our lives is to be happy, and I haven't yet met someone who doesn't actually think that that's true. So we're pretty much always trying to strive for this, for happiness. How can we really achieve it? A liberal arts education is making a tacit argument that the way we achieve it is by undergoing a kind of education that is really formation and liberty of soul. And the disciplines that are involved in a liberal arts education, each in its own way, is bent towards helping in that process. I've kind of already explained how my own discipline does that. I think that the purpose of a liberal arts education is to help us to understand what true freedom is. It usually means something like self-restraint. It usually means being able to say no to myself. This is not a popular way of thinking about freedom, but I know that in the tradition, this is the way to think about it. Freedom, I am free if I can say, I forego this for the sake of something better. That's real freedom. We have very little notion of that in our current milieu. And I think that now more than ever, there's a need for a kind of education that makes it possible for us to understand our own limitations as human persons and flourish given those limitations, choosing them rather than trying to obliterate them. They'll never be obliterated because human nature is human nature, but we can be happy working within them, and that's another piece of a liberal arts education, understanding what limitations are and how they're actually designed for our happiness. Yes, I would agree with you. And the object of criticism in the critical thinking should probably be whatever it is I haven't had to work to understand, things that I take for granted. So whether that's a political ideology that I'm being fed by media on either end, on either extreme, whether that's what I get on my Instagram feed, whether that's what I get on my YouTube channels, the ones that I follow. The problem with the way things are culturally for us now is that we're constantly being fed what we want to hear. It's like a positive feedback loop all the time. Your ideas are right. Here's more evidence that your ideas are right. And here's yet more evidence that your ideas are right. So an education, a liberal arts education that promotes critical thinking is going to invite someone to question that positive feedback loop. It's not that a liberal arts education is not designed to make me question, for example, authority, whether it's the authority of a text or the authority of a political leader or of an administrator at the university. It's not that we shouldn't be thinking critically about things that we hear, ideas that we hear from those texts or those people. But if I don't begin with myself, I have no basis upon which to make critical judgments of others or of other ideas. I think that a true liberal arts education begins with critical thinking applied to my own lenses, my own blinders, my own pet ideas, my own fond notions about reality. That's what I conceive of as a true liberal arts education.